All right, hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. This is episode 156. I'm flying solo tonight. Talking about my crowdfunding experiences, 12 plus years. Truth be told, it's probably more than that, but 12 plus sounds good. Can't remember exactly. The 14, 15, 13, 12 plus years of creating and supporting crowdfunding. And what I mean by that, of course, is that's how many years I have spent not just creating crowdfunding campaigns, but also backing them too. I've backed them on Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I think that's about it, maybe. I've had them mostly on Indiegogo at this point, though starting off on Kickstarter. Although maybe I did both. There's a very long history to all of this, and that's the thing. That's why I want to kind of go over it today. Now you have Fund My Comic entering the fray. There's been a couple different ones here and there over the years. It's a very interesting landscape, and it's a very confusing one. So I'm not really going to be commenting on other people's campaigns or anything like that. I'm going to be looking at all my own. So everything's going to be anecdotal. It's going to be very experiential in terms of what I went through, what I learned from it, what I thought was a success out of it, what I thought was a failure. I'm not going to teach you how to run a crowdfunding campaign directly. Maybe you'll learn some things based off of what I went through. Maybe you won't. I don't know. But I'm going to just be talking about that. So I'm not going to be like necessarily putting together a crowdfunding campaign and then you can see how to do it and that kind of a thing. That's simple enough. That's the easy stuff compared to the rest of it. So I'll talk about a couple different things of what I did right, what I did wrong, even on the current campaign that we have going on right now for Alterna, and even my current King Cryptid campaign. Every one of these is always a lesson. It's always a learning process, something to take away from it, something to try different, and maybe sometimes you learn, or I've learned, okay, that worked that time, and I should have kept doing that. You mix up sometimes when the whole, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there's been things like that have happened over the years. Not too many, but there's been things where I figured, okay, well, we'll take a shot. We'll do it this way instead. And it didn't really work out. So I'll go over that. I'm hoping to keep this all within an hour or so. Hopefully I could do that. We'll see. And I'll be answering questions from you guys as well in the chat. But there are going to be times where I'm going to not be able to see what you guys are posting as I'm seeing and looking at other windows and whatnot. So just be mindful of that. But again, it's just going to be me on here tonight. And again, talking about crowdfunding experiences, my crowdfunding experiences, creating and supporting campaigns over the past 12 years. Okay. Before we get started, I want to say hello to those of you in the chat. We got RBM here. What's up, RBM? Frederick is here as well. What's up? Yan Zhao is here as well, too, tonight. Hey, how's it going? Bobo is here, too. What's up, Bobo? Ronan says, okay, notepad, check. Pencil, check. I'm good. Let's learn some stuff. And I hope you do. I hope you do get something out of this. I think if you're a crowdfunding veteran at this point, there's probably some things I could learn from you. I think at this point as well, if you're starting off, again, it is a very confusing landscape. It is. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm just detailing my experiences. I'm still learning. Every one of these campaigns, I'm still learning. I learned what maybe went right, what maybe went wrong. I'm learning even with some of the creators that have been on board, what they could have done differently to support their campaigns, because a lot of the alternate campaigns, much like the one that's currently going on right now, let me bring that up just so you can see it. They are campaigns that feature books that are not technically mine. So while I publish them, they're not my books. And Alterna is 100% creator-owned. And I always try to encourage, over the past 18 years, this is our 18th year, started just a few weeks ago. I always try to encourage creators to fully embrace that aspect, that this is yours. You own this 100%. I'm getting pennies compared to what you could be making. So that's the kind of thing that you have to keep in mind when you're a creator and you go 100% creator owned. There's some pros to that, and there's a lot of cons, but all the cons are of your own choosing and of your own design. I've seen a lot of people over the years go the creator-owned path and not fully utilize that. They don't do any merch. They don't really talk about their book. They're not really enthusiastic about their book. They don't really believe it could do well. They're just kind of out there with it, and they don't want someone else to own it or take over or do anything like that. So they end up kind of just going, well, it's a miracle it even got picked up. And that's kind of it sometime. I've dealt with some people like that over the years. I've seen it happen with other publishers as well. So it's one of those things where when I put a campaign up like this, if the creators are not full, ready, and raring to go, and it means everything to them to get these stories into the hands of their readers, the results can vary. They can really vary, because I can only talk about it and do so much and bring so much to the table here where it's not my creation. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I can't tell you the story of why I created it, because I didn't create it. And I can't tell you what I have planned in the future for it. I can't let you know even something as simple as maybe what's coming in the next issue sometime. So it's really important when creators are doing this, whether you're doing it through a publisher or you're doing it on your own, because conversely, and this campaign is up on the Alterna site as well as Indiegogo, but conversely, when I'm bringing my own book to the table, which is King Cryptid, I'm able to talk about it a lot more, and the results are evident. So it's something that I encourage creators. You have to make sure that you, above all, more than anyone else in the whole wide world, cares about what you're doing, that you are bringing it. It's not anyone else's job. It's not your publisher. It's not your creative team's job. It's your job. And if sometimes you're the whole entire creator, then that responsibility falls upon you. Now, other people are there to help you. I'm there to help. I'm there to be like, hey, point me in a direction and let's go. If you want help on this, if you want someone to guide you, if you want someone to make sure that, you know, that they've got your back in this, you know, if you're doing a mistake and this and that, and you need an extra set of eyes to look out for you, if you need someone to think of things and strategies and talk out different, I'm here. That's me. That's what I'm there for. I also do the fulfillment on the campaigns and whatnot as well, but it's like primarily that's what I'm there. I'm there for guidance, essentially, in a big way. But if you know you give that guidance and someone doesn't want to follow it, and then the results are poor, you know, it's difficult. So over the years, it's been really tough with some of the various creators that I've worked with, where I sit there and I wonder, well, why are you here? If you've got all the answers, why are you here? You know, do it on your own, get it out, and do it how you want to do it. If you're here, if you're wanting to work with me, then work with me. And it doesn't mean my way or the highway. It means let's have a discussion. Let's have a conversation. You need help on something, I'm offering you the help and the advice and the guidance, and, you know, talk back to me about, okay, that'll work, that won't work for me, because everything works differently for everybody. You know, everyone's only got so much time, everyone's only got so much experience or skill set or whatever it may be. There's things people can do that I can't, and there's things I can do that others can't. And maybe we can both learn, but also maybe we can both sometimes go, you know what, you're better than that, than I am, and you'll do that, I'll get out of your way, and then I'll do this and you get out of my way. And especially when time is of the essence, that's an important thing to acknowledge. So it really depends. You got to be able to put the ego aside and go, what is the best thing for the project? What is the best thing for the stories, the characters, and the readers, the customers? So that's the thing sometimes where it doesn't work out. And that extends past crowdfunding. But crowdfunding, you really notice it. So King Cryptid this campaign. It's also on the Alterna Comics site as well, so you can see it's split. The first campaign was not split. The first campaign was just on Indiegogo. It made $41,472 and had, I think, like 1,340 backers, something like that. This one has got, as you can see, this total was updated today, 914 total backers, and it's at 32,871. We've got a stretch goal for 1,000, and then we also have another stretch goal at 41,473 when it beats the previous campaign by $1. Also, just something really quick before I dive into the rest of tonight's topic. We got a full moon special tonight. It's a second chance to get the King Cryptid beanie. All the full moon and new moon specials of the previous year are now being repeated for this year until we do fulfillment. So if you did miss out on getting the beanie, it's available on the King Cryptid campaign on Indiegogo, and it's also available on the Alterna site. You can pick that up for $15. This is the last chance to get it before we go into production. Once we go into production, we're going to print some extras, but if you want to guarantee yours, make sure that you get your order in. This is, again, a full moon special. Tonight is a full moon, which means King Cryptid's powers are at their peak. He's the strongest on the full moon. So, before I dive in further, there's probably going to be a little bit of questions here in the chat regarding some things. And if you guys do have questions specifically about anything, I'll do my best to answer them. Some things I can answer, some things I can't, depending upon what my experience is. So I want to make sure that you guys get that. We got Cole King here. What's up, Cole? Says, what a great topic for tonight's show. Appreciate that. I hope it is. Unhinged, we've got, it says, I'm a teapot, short and stout. There's your handle, there's your spout. Be the teapot, unhinged. Ronan says, I gotta say, this intro is top 2 of intros. Oh, thank you, Ronan. Robert Doan, how's it going, Robert? Killer Kovacs is here, too. How's it going, Killer? Says, printing to order is an advantage. In a way, yes. And I'll discuss that in part of what I'll talk about tonight. James Murphy, how's it going, James? Shrek is here as well. What's up, Shrek? K-Pop is in the house. How's it going, K-Pop? Yan Zhao says, so plan on being here 2.5 hours. Gotcha. I'm going to try to seriously keep it to an hour and a half tops. I got things to do tonight. I got orders to ship. Frederick says, I'm going to do my first campaign this year. Curious to hear your thoughts tonight. Buddha Bear, hail. What's up, Buddha Bear? Hope you're doing well. Shrek says, anyone in the chat have a project they are considering crowdfunding? Yeah, please talk amongst yourselves regarding that. By all means. Kelraiser, what's up? Hope you're doing good. All right. So let's start off first by looking at, I'm going to stick largely to Indiegogo tonight. Now, we've had things on Kickstarter. Full disclosure, I've run probably 20 to 30 campaigns at this point, maybe a little more. Between Kickstarter and Indiegogo, it's possibly a little bit more, actually. Let's take a look at Indiegogo. For the first couple of years, I kind of stuck mostly to just Kickstarter. Indiegogo was just like flexible funding at that point, so they didn't have like the all or nothing. They didn't have pictures. Kickstarter didn't either. They didn't have pictures for the perks for a long time. And the biggest thing that got me to Indiegogo was the pictures on the perks and the add-ons. I thought that was a great addition. The money you make from either in terms of like you get like a percentage or 0.5% or whatever it is. Some people swear by Kickstarter, and Kickstarter has turned into a bunch of different things over the years. It wasn't the way it is now when I had started out. Some people prefer it. Some people don't. That's fine. Indiegogo, it really wasn't the place for comics when I was starting off with doing crowdfunding. And it's really improved over the years, but it's still far from perfect. All this stuff is far from perfect. In a perfect world, I think everybody would just go to their own site. But there is still some kind of advantage to being on these sites. Now, if you get shadow banned and things like that, that's frustrating. And then there's almost no advantage to being on there because you're directing everybody to it. And people that just feel like, okay, I already have an account set up and I'm familiar with the layout, they're going to go for that site regardless. So some people will just stay there anyway, and that's fine. I understand that too. Everyone's got their own reasons and motives. Like I said, mostly tonight I'm just going to analyze my own and talk about the successes, failures, and my experiences running the campaigns. So you can see, here's a bunch. So we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so 16 campaigns. So yeah, it's definitely closer to 30 then, because it's probably around that many with Kickstarter. And then in terms of the ones that I've helped, the ones that I've helped manage, the ones that I've helped guide, probably tack on another 20. So between everything is about 50 campaigns that I've either ran or helped to run over the 12 years. In terms of backing, it says I think like 40 or something campaigns I've backed on Indiegogo. And on Kickstarter, I know it was something like 100 or 200, something like that. Like I said, I had predominantly used Kickstarter more than I had used Indiegogo. The thing with Kickstarter, though, if anyone's waiting on perks or anything, I sympathize. But I've noticed over the years anyway with Kickstarter was way worse with people fulfilling for some reason than Indiegogo. I think I'm waiting on maybe 10% of my backings, so like 4 to 5 or 6 maybe tops in terms of everything else I've got. Whether it was late or not or whatever it is, that's a whole different story. But in terms of what I've got, I at least am only missing a handful. And I'm lucky to say that. I know people have had other experiences. With Kickstarter, though, I think about half of my contributions never got them. And I don't know if I was just backing the wrong things or whatever. But fast and loose back in the first 4 or 5 years of crowdfunding. So it's talking about maybe 100 or so perks on Kickstarter. And I don't even go to Kickstarter anymore. So that's a thing for me. I don't really go to Kickstarter. I don't think a lot of things are going to have to change for me to go on there and put a campaign up there. It didn't help when they had a fraudulent campaign for King Cryptid last year, among many other fraudulent campaigns as well were on Kickstarter last year. It kind of left me questioning their vetting process that they really talk about in such high regard when they're letting obvious fraudulent campaigns. Like every one of these campaigns was run by someone from like Hong Kong or China or whatever it is. And you could clearly tell that this was not their campaign. And they let them through anyway. And it took upwards of maybe a week in some cases or more in some cases for those campaigns to get taken down. So just as I was about to let Kickstarter back into, considering doing a small kind of second chance campaign or something like that, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I can't tell people go to this site and give them your information and whatnot when it's very well possibly compromised. If it is or it isn't, I don't know. But that's how I feel about it. I feel like that's a strange place to be if you're letting these kinds of campaigns on there, doing whatever it is that they're doing, and you're supposed to vet whether these campaigns are legit or not, and they're very clearly not. So that was a problem from last year. I don't know if it's a problem that's going to continue. I don't know if this problem has gotten better. I'm not keeping tabs at this point on Kickstarter. Some people really like Fund My Comic at this point. I don't mind Fund My Comic. We did an Alternaween campaign on Fund My Comic. A couple confusing things on Fund My Comic in terms of the utility of it, the interface in terms of getting like pictures on there, and it feels like, oh, okay, you just have to add the pictures within the context of the typing, and then you just add the picture. So once I got that, it was like, okay, but something I really wish that they could tweak on Fund My Comic is the shipping, because I found that it was charging shipping over and over and over again for people. So if they bought 4 things, it wasn't charging like a baseline for shipping. And if they could kind of work that out, again, I don't know if they have at this point. It's been maybe 3 or 4 months since I've used Fund My Comic. If they could charge like a baseline for shipping and then do almost like an add-on feature or have something like that, I would like that a lot better. So at this point, I might do a Fund My Comic campaign, a very, very small one as a second chance kind of thing with just the new comics for the alternate campaign that's currently running. So maybe like something in March, put something up for just the 4. But I know some people feel like Fund My Comic is a great alternative, and I think it is for many different reasons. But I think it's still young. It's still there's still a lot to learn, and I think they're going to figure it out. But at this point in time, I'm going to stick to the Indiegogo, and I'm going to stick to definitely, which is where people seem to prefer more, pushing the Alterna site and backing directly through us. And I think that's a great thing for everybody to consider. Have your own site. Even if you don't use it for crowdfunding, use it to sell. That's really important. I can't stress enough how much that's just, you got to have a place for people to go to. You need a site, you need something where people can go when you're not just kind of having a crowdfunder, or after the crowdfunder ends, you can have it listed here. Even if you're putting stuff on eBay and you don't have a store on your site, and it's just a link that goes to your eBay or wherever else it goes to. I think that's really important. That's something that a lot of people have to consider. Again, everyone in their due time. That's something that I had to consider. We were on Etsy for a while. We outgrew that, and then we set up everything on our own site, and now that's doing well. So there's a lot of different things. And is our site perfect? There's things about our site that I wish that we could change. You know, we're kind of at the mercy of our website provider in terms of a couple different things they could do. I wish they could have more of a true to crowdfunding format where if you back, you would see the total and all that kind of stuff get changed and updated in real time. But they don't have anything like that at this point in time, among other things. There's a couple other things too I wish that the site could do. But it's developing and it's getting there, and a lot of these places too, I've noticed that maybe a couple of years ago they didn't have a bunch of features that they have now, and I'm sure that there'll be more and better things in the future. So as far as the crowdfunding stuff goes, here's a quick rundown of just what the gist of the campaigns were. The one we have currently now is for 4 comics. Again, these are comics being published by Alterna. These are not comics that I'm creating. The King Cryptid series is mine. I create that along with a couple other artists that are on board. Alterna Ween, that's a campaign designed around giving comics as trick-or-treats. So we have comics usually in clearance, and we sell those at a very low price, sometimes at print costs or less. It's usually stuff we have overstock of or stuff that's damaged, but not so damaged enough that a kid could get it on Halloween and not be absolutely thrilled. So usually Alternaween is that kind of a thing. We sell them at a big discount, and then backers will purchase those and give those away as trick-or-treats. That's the purpose of Alternaween. It's not necessarily to provide people with comics on the cheap, but I'm not exactly going to check into, whether or not you're doing that. It's up to you. Just be aware when you do back an Alternaween campaign, you're going to get doubles or triples of books, because the whole idea is that they are trick-or-treats. If you get 25, like usually we sell them like a bundle with 25. If you get 25 of one book, even that is still going to be a good deal if you're using them as trick-or-treats. You're not going to get, because each kid is getting a different, it's a different kid getting the same comic. So, but we don't do that. We don't do a whole stack of 25. You're going to get 2 or 3, not it's not crazy like that. So King Cryptid 5 to 9, that's a campaign for my series, like I said. The Alterna August pre-orders. So these kinds of campaigns. Now, when I say that they're pre-orders, I also mean that if we don't reach the goal, we don't make the comic. And then also those comics get canceled. So that's how that works. It's a bit realistic in terms of how you have to publish things. So sometimes you could even reach the goal too, and there's still things that hinder looking at it and going, that decision to maybe carry on with that title, we have to really consider it. I take a lot of things into consideration in terms of, is that creator really pushing and promoting the book? What did that book sell like? And then also, how are the back issues doing for that particular series, if there are in fact back issues, which there are usually multiple back issues for most of the titles that we have on these campaigns. Now, if largely the money is made from art commissions, from merch, things like that, that's great. It'll help fund the books, But if the books aren't really selling and they're not really doing what they should do in terms of the benchmarks that are discussed with the various creators, that's something that I have to take into consideration. Do we move forward with that series or not? And I look at the trend of it. I look at the trend because sometimes there's a book that maybe it's not doing too great, but there's an upward trend. It gets more and more sales every campaign. And then sometimes there's other books that might outsell the book that's on an upward trend, but they are on a downward trend. So the book that's on a downward trend might end up getting canceled before it's too late and we've taken on too much inventory, as opposed to the book that isn't selling as well but is on an upward trend. People are more excited about it and they keep gaining readers time after time. So there's a lot of different things for me to consider on that level. Same thing goes with merch. Sometimes there's merch that seems like no one wants that at all, whether it's the property or the merch. It could be a mug, it could be a bag, it could be a beanie, it could be a sticker, whatever, a shirt, you know. So I got to look at that and see, okay, well, compared to what it should have sold based on what these things usually sell like for us, is that more? Is that less? Is that good? Is that bad? You know, do we do that again with this particular thing? What was it about this piece that worked or didn't work? So I have to evaluate merch and things like that too based on that. So going along here, we got pre-order campaigns. Again, these are all campaigns largely for everyone else's books at Alterna. So everyone's on here with that. King Cryptid 1 to 4. Again, this is mine. This was last year. The Alterna winter campaign and fall campaign. Now, the fall campaign was the first campaign we ever did like that. And it did very well on the back of a lot of promotion from me, along with a lot of great backers coming out to support this campaign that had 10 issues on it for $25. Some great campaign exclusives. We had a lot of great books on here too, but it was really important. I explained this to the creators at the time. I said a big part of what got this campaign up and running was promotion and marketing. And now they all did their part at the time, but in terms of really getting out there and really banging the drum for this campaign, I was doing a show, I think, almost every other day in the month that this campaign was new, the first 30 days. And I told everybody what would happen with the winter campaign. I would not be able to do the same level of promotion because I would have to fulfill the fall campaign, which was, I think, at that time, like 700 backers. It raised like 30,000, something like that. So I said, I need everybody to go out there. We had 10 books again. I said, everybody that's on this campaign, book at least 2 shows. Do 2 shows and do promotion. Get out there into the YouTube comic sphere. And it's good for them to do that too. Everybody needs to be the face of their own book, the face of their own brand. Alterna is an umbrella brand here, where everybody else that's under the umbrella is doing their own thing. So if everybody isn't doing their own thing and is instead relying on me to be the representative and the voice and face and brand for their book, that is doing a disservice to them. That's going to hurt them. And I don't want to see creators get hurt in that capacity, but a lot of the times creators view it as, well, you're the publisher, so you should do all of that. Now, I will do some of it. I will help. I will do as much as I possibly can. But it's really important for creators to do that and get out there, because at the end of the day, it benefits them 100% to get out there, to become familiar with who's supporting and backing and reading their books, engage with that audience, and also be the voice and face of what you're doing. This is the thing that you're putting so much time and effort and care into. And whether you're at Alterna or you're not at Alterna, it's so important that you do that. It's important that you, again, like I said before, you have to care more about this than anyone else in the history of time in this world. Does that sound crazy to you? If that sounds crazy to you, if it sounds like I can't possibly care more about what I'm working on and devoting so much of my time and energy and money towards than anybody else, if that doesn't sound like something that makes sense to you, you really need to reconsider what you're doing here. And I don't mean here at Alterna. I mean making this kind of project. It shouldn't be too much of a crazy thing to go, you have to really care about this. It has to mean everything to you. Because the more that it means to you, the more it'll mean to somebody else. Now, I can cheerlead as hard as I possibly can, and I'm here for it. And if someone is, it gets me up and going to see people that really care about what they're making. That fires me up. Conversely, when someone doesn't seem to care what they're doing, I don't give a crap what the hell they're doing. And that goes for whoever's published at Alterna, and it goes for whoever's out there making their comic or doing whatever they're doing with their life. It's infectious to see people. It's a contagious thing. You see the enthusiasm. You see people passionate about what they're doing. You see them caring a lot about it. You see the eyes, light up. You see the faces. They love talking about their book. It means something to them. You can hear it. You can see it. And because of that, it'll mean something to you when you want to take a look at it and back it. And it doesn't mean you got to go out there and be like the world's best salesman or a showman or whatever it is you got to do. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means you have to be genuinely, sincerely caring about what it is you're doing. So with the winter campaign, it was the first time I realized I'm going to probably have to curb my expectations in regards to people promoting. Very, very few people promoted when they had books on this campaign. And it's one of those things where, and I'm being very real with you guys right now, it is difficult to get people to care about something in a different capacity than what they're used to if they don't already care about it. And a lot of people have gone, well, why aren't you taking submissions anymore? Why aren't you doing this or doing that regarding broadening the catalog at Alterna? And I'm sincerely just tired of trying to get people to care about something that they should already care about. So who we have right now at Alterna, I really believe in books like Rob Geronimo's Blood Realm. Like, you can see Rob's out there. I've known Rob for years. Rob really cares about the stories he's telling. He really loves that book. A book like Unit 44 with Wes Loker, he had his first 4 issues told, and then he was predominantly a letterer. He still kind of is a letterer, but he had so many things going on with his life. He's like, look, Pete, I got to take a step back. Maybe I'll come back to this eventually. I think it was like a year. He had like a year hiatus, and then he came back to it with a whole new game plan and reinvigorated to kind of tell these stories with these characters in a whole different kind of way, taking it as an ongoing series, one case file at a time. And the two bumbling Area 51 agents, Hatch and Gibson, they do these different things, and they encounter different creatures and monsters and cases and all this stuff, and people caught on to it. It went from a middling kind of series for issues 1 to 4. People didn't love it, they didn't hate it, whatever. It was pretty average for what we were doing at Alterna, to now it's on an upward trajectory. It gets better and better. More and more people are reading it and getting it with every issue. And that's huge. That's huge. And he took that upon himself because he cares about what he's doing. So I see that. I see that kind of stuff. And that gets me fired up about those books. There's been a lot of those kinds of books over the years, but there's also, unfortunately, been a lot in the other direction as well. I'm not going to dive into that on a specific level, but every one of those things, these people are tremendously talented. I can't argue that, and I won't argue that. But in terms of the motivation to succeed, when it comes to a crowdfunder especially, getting out there, talking about your book, letting people know about your characters, making sure that this is important to them, and they let you know it's important to them. That is vital. So if you're going to run a crowdfunding campaign, that's number one. Before anything, you got to care. So going back further, we got the Because You Demanded It campaign. Because You Demanded It was basically a campaign for reprints. That campaign did really well. We might have to do another one of those in the future. I'll have to see what we've got and what we could do. 12 Days of Alterna. This was a like a Christmas time, holiday time thing. You know, we just did a couple of different things here. It's very similar to Alternaween in terms of that. Alternaween 2, Alternaween 1, and the Alterna Comics expansion campaign. This was a whole bunch of things that we were basically raising money to help us grow and get a bigger storage unit and do other bigger and better things at Alterna in terms of upgrading various things here. So there's a lot of campaigns on the Indiegogo, but it's been pretty steady at this point doing these campaigns that are relatively around 3 to 4 a year in terms of the bundles of books. We run them now simultaneously on the Alterna Comics site. So if you want, you could back them on Indiegogo, or if you want, you can back them on the Alterna site. Now, when I'm looking here at the Alterna site on the campaign we currently have, so a big difference between what we currently run with Indiegogo and what we run on our own site is that people are also able to purchase other things outside of what's on the campaign. On Indiegogo, when you put it all together, you have to list individually every item. And then you have to list individually every item as an add-on, and then you have to also sync them up. It's not as simple as you go in there and you just list items, and then you can determine what's an add-on and what's not an add-on. You have to literally actually, and it sounds crazy, I wish they didn't do it this way. I wish it was like the flick of a switch of like, they could be both a main perk and an add-on, or they could just be a main perk, or they could just be an add-on. But they do it this way. You have to set it up separately and everything else. So on the Alterna site, you can back a whole lot of different things. This is just what's currently on the campaign page, but you can also go and get digital comics if you want. You can look up the rest of the comic book line that we have. You can get merch. You can get graphic novels. You can put all of this together. Also, heck, you could even get a gift card if you wanted. Right now we have a special on the gift cards. You get an extra 10%. So if you bought a $50 gift card, you'll also get mailed a 10%, emailed a 10% bonus promo code. So a $5 bonus promo code to use that on a purchase. So you would basically end up getting 55 for your 50. So you could do that, you know, but we have that right now going on through January. But you could do all these different things on the Alterna site that you really kind of can't do when you go to the Indiegogo. But some people like going on the Indiegogo because that's all they really like to shop on for these kinds of comics. And I understand that. I respect that. But we're giving the option here to do both. Back wherever you prefer. Most people, it's been proven at this point with us that about maybe 60 to 70% of the backers are going instead to our own site as opposed to Indiegogo, or I'm guessing wherever else we would have put it. So if this was even on Kickstarter or Fund My Comic, when we had the Alternaween campaign that just happened, we had it on Fund My Comic, on Indiegogo, and on the Alterna site, and we noticed that most people still right to the Alterna site. Very few to Indiegogo, very few to Fund My Comic. So people still went right to us. Now, I can't say that this would be the same strategy to follow for someone starting out. You're going to get a lot of people building up not just your confidence, but you building up their confidence when you go to a site that's like an Indiegogo. And I'm going to say this because most people are not going to put the big time investment or monetary investment into a website to start selling direct when they're just starting out. And I don't necessarily expect you to do that. I suggest having at least a website and a place to sell afterwards. That doesn't mean you have to have it on your own website and do something expensive and get in over your head and whatever else. Like I said, we started off, we were putting it on Etsy and things like that. You could do Etsy, you could do eBay, there's a whole bunch of places to go to. But you're going to notice that if you go to a crowdfunding site and you are a new creator, you're going to get a lot of people not paying attention to how you're designing the website. You're going to get people focused more on what you're doing with your book. Because if you're designing your site and they're not acclimated to it whatsoever, and you're designing the site and you don't really know what you're doing, and you're putting it in there and it's all over the place and it's difficult to find stuff, and if it looks like a site that's super sketchy and they don't know who you are, chances of them backing are going to be next to nothing. But if you go to Indiegogo, if you go to Kickstarter, if you go to Fund My Comic, if you go to some space where there's kind of familiarity there, they can focus more on what it is you're selling, what it is that you're raising this money for, and then back the project. You're also going to benefit, however small, you're still going to benefit from it, from just being on those platforms as opposed to being on your own site, funding it that way. So I see a lot of people that maybe just want to go their own site and ignore doing the crowdfunding site aspect of it. I don't really recommend that. It's up to you. You could do whatever you want. But from my personal experiences, it is really difficult when you go out and you do anything and you're 100% on your own. And when I also say that, I strongly encourage, if you're having problems with any kind of whatever you're trying to do within this space or any other space, look to see how you and your items are of service to people. How is your story of service to people? How is the platform you're trying to build of service to people? And it doesn't mean that you have to do things for them. It means that when you are doing whatever it is you're doing, you keep them in mind. So when you're making your story, you entertain yourself first and foremost. But as soon as this story is going to be ready to start going out into the world, you need to start thinking about, but is this story now entertaining? Is it clear? Is there clarity for people? Is there a purpose? Is there a theme? Is there something I'm trying to say with these characters that they're doing and what they're about and what they're going through? It doesn't mean you have to turn it all into some kind of political allegory. It means that you have to impart meaning, something that enriches people's lives. And maybe it makes them, and it doesn't mean it has to be dramatic or touching. It could be unbelievably ridiculous and stupid and makes people laugh. That's wonderful still. But what kind of emotion are you looking to get out of people? What is it? What are you trying to achieve here? What it is that you want to do? So as soon as you start doing that with your story and start thinking of others, the audience as well, when you're also doing stuff like this, when you go out there and you're in promotion mode, you're marketing, you're getting the word out, how also are you trying to help others? Now, you can help others in various ways. You can help others through supporting their campaigns, either spreading the word or doing so financially or whatever it is, if something appeals to you. But never go in there thinking quid pro quo. Never go in there thinking like, I did this for them, they should do this for me. It has to be of a genuine benefit. You have to understand that you are going to be giving sometimes more than you're receiving. But that's going to be at first. I guarantee the more that you give over time, the more you're going to end up going, wow, I've built up things the right way. And there's so many more people now around me. And it's because I help them. And you help them in a genuine fashion. But you have to want to do that. Some people do not want to do that. The whole entire reason I even started Alterna, if I wanted to go out and make lots of money and do this and do that, I could have done 100 other things with my life. This is a passion for me. This is something I want to do with my life because I can't imagine doing anything else with my life and being fulfilled, being happy, having next to no money and still being happy. What could you do? And eventually, the more you do that, the more confidence you get, the more you'll eventually have money with what it is that makes you so happy. But not to turn this into like a self-help seminar, but you have to look at it as how are you being of service to others? Because I see a lot of people going, well, what about me? People aren't helping me. They're not here for me. They don't know about my book. Are you going out there and making sure that you're making those connections? Are you going out there making sure that you're trying to also lift up others? Are you trying to also give them a platform, however small? You know, all these different things along the way you build up. And that's the whole thing that's going to, ironically, end up benefiting you in the long run. Now, there's a lot of people that don't really maybe either have that attitude and that inclination to do that. There's a lot of people that don't really think that that's the way that that works. Personally, for me, and what I've noticed, anecdotally for a lot of people, that is 100% true in terms of you go out there trying to benefit the lives of others, be of service to others, and you will get rewarded for that. It takes time sometime, but keep at it. So with this whole thing, this aspect of crowdfunding especially, people ignore the crowd building part. It doesn't matter so much about what platform you're going to use as long as you are focused on building the crowd. If you aren't building the crowd, you're not going to have a crowd to fund what you're doing. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on any of this, but this is stuff that I've noticed that people do. This is stuff that I've tried to incorporate with myself. There are certain aspects, though, of certain things that only some people can do to a certain extent. Sometimes it's not time yet. You have to do more work in another way. You have to build up your platform. You have to build up the book you're working on. You have to incorporate different changes and learn from mistakes. There's all kinds of things that happen over the course of not just creating your book or your crowdfunder or your business or anything. There's all kinds of things that happen over the course of your life. There's all kinds of things that are going to come at you that you're not going to be able to predict. One big thing, if I had to say a takeaway from every campaign I've ever done, I look at it and go, I didn't give myself enough time. And I know some people go, Pete, you're never really that late with your campaigns. I could be a month late, 2 weeks late, whatever. It bothers me. It eats at me. I hate that. I hate being late on anything with that kind of stuff. Sometimes, though, things happen. And I try to be as open about it as I possibly can when I'm up against a lot of different hurdles and obstacles that I didn't foresee occurring. And I've noticed a lot of other people, too, have done that over the years, which is great. And that's what you should do. But there are things where I look at it and I'm like, I'll give myself more time on the next one. So it's always better to give yourself more time. Whatever the time, if you think you need 4 months, give yourself 6. If you find that the 6 wasn't enough next time, give yourself 8, and so on. That's a really important lesson. When you're just starting off learning crowdfunding, something that I did when I was starting off learning crowdfunding, which I don't recommend that you do, was make it more about me and why I needed the money, as opposed to me and why I'm creating what I'm creating. Now, there's a subtle distinction there because you need the money. It's obvious. But in the early days of crowdfunding, I think almost all of us were running around like it was the equivalent of GoFundMe for creative projects. You know, almost everyone had the equivalent of like, for $1 a day, you can help out this poor creator create this thing. I don't recommend doing that. Don't turn yourself into a charity case or anything like that. Instead, focus on what it is that you're offering to people. Why should they be there? Why would they want to participate? Stick to also focusing on your strengths. Some people will tell you, well, work on your weaknesses, work on the tough spots, you know, and yeah, you always want to work on what you're not necessarily great at, but there's times for that. And there's times to focus on what you're really good at and stick to that. And what you're not really good at, find other people who are really good at that. And this way, everybody can go from strength to strength. If you're constantly always focusing on your weaknesses, you're going to become jack of all trades, master of none. You're going to be very, very good at knowing about a bunch of different things, but not very, very good at implementing or doing them. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on your strengths, building those strengths up. If you're really great at art, keep pushing yourself on the art. If you're really great and you love writing, lettering, inking, graphic design, whatever it may be, focus on those strengths. Keep trying to learn as much as you can and build that up. Now that also, other than the crowdfunding aspect, has a lot to do with comics. If you're creating comics, if you're creating any kind of project, you want to, of course, try to do your best to make sure that you're competent in what you're doing. The more competent you become, the more confident you become. The more confident you become, the more it looks like you're trustworthy to back. If you're kind of wishy-washy and you're on, you're I don't know, I guess back this book I mean, I made it. That's going to be a strong, that's going to be such a strong way to sell your book. I don't know. I guess right? You look at that and you're like, oh man, what a great sales pitch. This person's full of confidence. They're like, I don't know what I'm really doing here. But if you do, I guess you give me some money for this thing. No, you want people to know and understand that you know what you're talking about in many different degrees, especially your story, especially your characters that you're creating. You're spending so much time with them, more than anybody else. You want them to know and understand that. And then on the other things, if you're not that confident about it, if you're unsure, make sure you ask people who at least seem to be confident in what they're doing. If there's things that you don't know what to do when it comes to putting together a campaign or whatever other aspect of what it is that you want to do, but you see someone else that is, doesn't hurt to ask and say, how did you do that on your campaign? You know, and of course, be courteous when you do it, and don't expect a response either sometime, because people are incredibly busy with everything. But it doesn't hurt to ask people. Ask multiple people even, and get their opinion on something. Make sure that you would value their opinion as well. If you ask willy-nilly, like all over the place, 100 different people about it, you're going to get 100 different answers, and none of them you're going to really know if you can trust the answer or not. Is it of any value to you? You're not going to know. So if you respect that person's opinion, make sure you're going after them and respecting what they have to say in regards to if they do give you that opinion or if they don't. There's other things too where some people, you have to understand as well, you can't just approach a lot of people sometime and go, where'd you get that made? I want to get the same thing made. You need to have a prior existing relationship for most people to tell you that. So there's a human connection, conversation, communication aspect here as well. You have to understand tactfulness when it comes to that too. But that's going to help you out. It's helped me out over the years because I don't go into it going, well, what can I learn from this person as much as I can, soak up all the knowledge they have, and then move on, and then, you know, never talk to them again or pass it on and pay it forward. Be in a mindset of paying it forward when people have been very generous about knowledge with you. But to a certain extent, because there are certain things where you're going to have to go in there and you're going to have to really understand that I can't tell everyone where every single thing gets made and how it gets made and what gets done, because what happens is then all of a sudden you'll realize I don't have any time to do any of those things anymore. So it's not so much about making sure you keep all your secrets, although it's always good to have some when it comes to business. That's just the basics. But it's good to understand that you can't just go out there and here's my knowledge 24/7 all the time about everything for everyone every single time a question comes at me. You have to prioritize. You have to manage your time. That's an important aspect of, well, with crowdfunding. I've learned over the years with crowdfunding, and we'll go back to this campaign in particular. Let me get to this one. This was a big learning experience. Let's see. Okay, so the Because You Demanded It campaign. Let me click on this here so we can see this at large. Now, this campaign on the surface did very well, right? So 44,957, very close to 45, with 596 backers on board. It's still the highest dollar amount on a campaign we ever raised, but it is one of the worst campaigns we ever did. And that's 100% on me. The reason being is that we had, let's get to this here. We had a lot of issues on this campaign. So for $99, you got the fully loaded collector case. Now, we're not going to be doing collector cases after this this campaign. Most likely, they're all going to sell out. There's only like 20 or so left. So if you do want a collector case, go pick one up. It's on the Alterna site. It's also in the add-ons of the current Indiegogo campaign. But the reprints. So for $99, a customer got all the reprints we were making and unlocking over the course of the campaign. And then they also got blank variants that we were making too, along with that collector case. it was an incredible deal, right? Wonderful deal for the people who backed it. Horrible for us. I don't think we made any money on this. And the biggest reason being this. When we had put this campaign out, and I would do it again, but I would do it differently in the future. When we put this campaign out, it was November 15th, 2020 is when the campaign ended. Now, this is something I could not have foreseen. Supply chains, as a result of everything that had occurred in the year of 2020, were going horribly. Our print costs, by the time we had to fulfill, went up 40% from when we had started the campaign. And it was also very difficult to get collector cases, which resulted in a 4-month delay in fulfillment. So because of the 40% print cost increase and the collector case delay, that turned into a nightmare campaign. So I would not do it again the way that we did it. It was a good campaign in terms of where we were at the time, but I did not foresee how bad it would get. Now you're probably thinking, like, Pete, that's not really your fault. It doesn't matter if it's my fault or not. It's still something I have to deal with, and something I should have understood that could happen. So scale back. Scale back on what you're offering. We didn't need to end up offering a huge amount of issues. What is this here? This is 15, and then we unlocked all of these as well. And you got all these unlocked issues. I think it was something like close to 30 issues plus, like 34, 35 issues, plus the blank variants. Those were all unlocked, and those were for free. So if you got the fully loaded collector case, you pretty much got a campaign subscription. And so you got well over $99 worth of books. And you got that with the case. So because of that, it was like every one of those that sold and more was a loss. And that stung. I'd say that it probably cost an extra $6,000 on top of what we had raised. And then also considering the 10% that Indiegogo basically takes between credit card processing fee and then their fee. So you already lose about $4,000. So, you know, that campaign was rough. It was a learning experience. Never on that board again am I going to do that many issues when it comes to printing and fulfillment and everything else. Because also fulfillment-wise, that's the other thing too. We had so many items on this and so many things that were going back to print. That in and of itself, it practically filled the storage unit that we had at the time. And to get that many books together and pack them and ship them and everything else, between the massive delays that we had with the supply chain issues and then the delays due to fulfillment taking forever, I would never do a campaign on this scale in this capacity again. The fully loaded collector case should have been $199. If that was $199 with everything that was there, we would have been okay. But because it wasn't, lesson learned. We took a hit for that. So I would go back and I would do a campaign like this about reprinting issues and whatnot if we actually can or if we have the need for it. But I would not approach it the same way. Now, something else to think about too is Alterna. We go through things a bit differently. We go through things with web press printers. We don't do print on demand. Someone earlier had mentioned print on demand. Now, print on demand is great. If you're starting off and everything, it could really help you out. But when you do certain things, let's say you start getting generally speaking, between 400 to 600 backers or more. You want to start going and moving away from print on demand. You want to start going more towards offset printing, or maybe even considering web press printing. Web press is like it's cold set, offset, and also heat set. That's for newsprint and a couple other type of paper stocks, but it depends how many you're printing. That's getting into printing is a whole nother episode that I'll probably do eventually. But the thing, you're going to experience economy of scale. So you're not really going to get economy of scale when you have digital printing, when you have print on demand. You're going to pretty much pay a print price, a unit price, and that's it. Let's say it's $2 a unit for a single issue comic. I'm not, don't hold me to that. I don't know what the prices are at this point. Might be higher, might be lower. Probably higher. So let's say it's $2 a unit. That's what it's going to be. Whether you order 300 or 500 or 1,000, that's largely what it's going to be. There's very few that will do digital printing, print on demand, and actually give you a price break with what you're printing. You're going to notice if you printed like 300 copies of your print on demand book, you probably could have printed 1,000 at an offset printer. Shop around too for printers. Shop around, get print samples, talk to them, let them know what you're trying to do, all that stuff. Will it take you some time? Sure, but it'll probably save you a lot of money, and you'll make a really good looking product. That on my own experiences, man, I talked to over 200 printers or something over the past 5 or 6 years. 200 easily, over 200 printers. I mean, talk to them on the phone. Many of them you could respond and do stuff with email or whatever, but a lot of them you're going to be having phone conversations, which also is good. You have questions for them, and then hopefully they can answer them, and that'll build up your confidence. All of this is part of the process. You know how there's a process to create your book and to create your art and to create your story and your writing, and there's a process for this too. And there's a process that you have to go through. It's not as simple as you just go to someone and say, give me all your contacts. I want to go and, use exactly who you use. Sometimes you have to go through it, search for yourself, talk to the people yourself. That's how you're going to ultimately attain the knowledge you need that's going to build up your confidence, as opposed to relying on others to do it all for you. Now, you can ask people about what they do, and I do encourage that when you have questions. But more than likely, that's part of your research. Don't just jump on board with like, oh, they use them, so I'll use them too. Okay, that should point you in the right direction. So if you're looking for someone to make trading cards, and they say, oh, go to this site, that's the site I use. You're looking for someone to make stickers, you want to make stickers. Oh, this site, check it out. I go to Sticker Mule or whatever. So you go to that site, and then you go, oh, well, okay, they have sites like this. So let me just look up, custom sticker, and look that up and see, and start price comparing and start doing all these different kinds of things. A lot of people do that, but you'll be surprised how many people don't do that. So it might sound obvious to you. I hope it sounds obvious to you. If it sounds obvious to you, you're halfway there. So if it doesn't sound obvious to you, and now you're going, oh yeah, price compare, because there's a lot of people that do a lot of different things, and they all can, you can get a better deal, or even go onto certain sites and see that they can offer something to you that someone else can't. That's part of the process, and doing that process will help you become more confident. And all of this stuff will build up into when you're putting your campaign together, when you're talking about your campaign, when you're relaying your experiences and talking about what it is that you do. You'll be able to come across like you're competent and you know what you're talking about, which will lead to people feeling more comfortable with backing what you're doing. It's like wax on, wax off. Like he's doing the wax on, wax. What's that for? It's all for something. It's all building towards you being more competent with what it is you're doing. And that trickles into every other aspect of what it is you're doing. Again, this isn't revelatory information. This isn't me trying to say and sound clever about it. If anything, I hope this is unbelievably obvious. I hope everybody at home is going like, yeah, Pete, we already know that. But this is something that a lot of people I find don't know. So it's important. But yeah, with this campaign, it's one of those things, man, who could have known? Who could have known about the pandemic and the supply chains being hit the way they were, especially certain aspects of it? But that doesn't matter, because right from the get-go, I had already priced things wrong. I should have priced it at $199 instead of $99 for the fully loaded collector case, and I should have also curtailed back on what we went to print with, because I went back to print also assuming a lot of different creators would have still been around. And that's another vital, important thing to keep in mind. And so what I mean by that is like the XII, that book within, by the time this campaign was ready to fulfill, that book was already going to be gone. And that's kind of one of those things that I kind of should have saw the writing on the wall. So I shouldn't have went back to print with the XII. Even books like, let's say, man, it's tough at the time, but I should have made some tough decisions with some of these books. I'm not going to go down like, okay, Exilium number 1. I shouldn't have went back to print with Exilium number 1. We more than likely were not going to be printing Ben's next thing. He was going to do that on his own. No animosity, nothing like that. It was just like, it was the benefit of both of us at that point in time. He wanted to go a different path, and that was fine. I wish him nothing but the best. But we shouldn't have gone to print with Exilium number 1. We should have just continued to sell and clear out with what we had of the Exilium series. And there's a couple other issues on here as well, where, I kind of went against my gut. I'm glad we went and reprinted, Blood Realm issues and things like that. That was great. I'm glad we went and reprinted The Chair number 1. That's my own book, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm glad we reprinted the Mr. Crypt books, but we should have scaled back a bit on what we had gone to print again with. And that's something that now, if I were to do a similar campaign, I would learn from what I did on this. It's a very expensive to learn lesson to learn, though. So there's a bunch of different things. Every single campaign is a learning experience. You learn what not to do, what to do, what worked, what didn't. Some people have asked about, let me see if I can go back here to the current campaign. And I see a bunch of your questions and comments too. I'll get to them in just a moment. I know we're already past the hour mark. This will be the last thing before I get to the questions and comments in the chat. Some people asked about this, about the digital option here. A couple people today were talking about this, but I've seen this be talked about a lot. People have talked about digital comics. Do you put them out there on your crowdfunder in general? What do you do? So Altern has always been putting out digital comics. Altern has always been putting out stuff on various platforms. But then we had left all of the distributors around sometime in 2020 to 2021. It started off at the end of 2019 with our newsstand distributor and our book distributor. And then 2020, it turned into leaving Diamond, Comixology, all of that. Now, I don't regret any of that. Some of that stuff was the best decisions we ever made because we were not doing well. We sell more digital comics now directly than we did through Comixology. We sell, we make more money through comics now than we did when we went through with Diamond. And the book distribution was a nightmare. Newsstand distribution was a nightmare. Complete loss across the board. And these are aspects of businesses that are full returnability, zero accountability. The same problem that happens in the book industry is what happens in newsstand, but it happens worse on newsstand. The book industry wasn't too bad in, I say, up until 2013, 2014. Then it became horrible. 2016, 2017 in particular, it was like you had to constantly pay to get reviews through libraries and various trades, and sometimes they want you to pay $500, and that's not happening. They want you to pay for placement. They want you to pay if you want a book facing out. They want you to pay if you even want the book to still be at the store. So for you to have the book at the store past like sometimes a month or two, they'd want you to pay for your spot. Chances of making money through the book distribution into stores was very slim. Most of our sales came through Amazon, and at that point I'm looking at it and going, if it's most of them coming through Amazon, we could just sell them direct, either through Amazon or on our own site. But we lost money through book distribution and through newsstand. Newsstand was abominable. Newsstand was horrible. Like that was a nightmare. Complete mess all over the place, top to bottom, every single aspect of it. Awful. The only good aspect whatsoever was, for the most part, stuff would be on a shelf. It would be good advertising. So if you treat it as advertising and a complete 100% loss, that you're not going to make any money off of it, you can get customers through seeing what you have out there and that you exist and that kind of a thing. But as far as comics go on newsstand, man, it's a rough market. and it's largely rough because the tentpole publishers, the big publishers with the big properties, they did a wonderful job of pushing a lot of people away, both in terms of the newsstand businesses and in terms of the customers. It's just the whole thing morphed. But that's, it's so just because that problem happened, it doesn't mean necessarily that we created it, but we were in it. And then we didn't know how to adapt in it because there were so many problems. We didn't have the money to adapt within that scenario, and we didn't have the brand awareness to do it. So that's where the faults become our own, particularly my own, in terms of didn't have the money to do the marketing necessary, didn't have the money to, even put a commercial out or something like that. Once you have that kind of coverage on something, you need the money to back it. So 100% when it comes to that, my fault. But you learn from it and you try to get out of those spots as soon as you possibly can when you realize not working out and there's most likely not a way to make it work out. So the digital, I digress. The digital, I find is very important. I like offering up the digital comics on not just our site, but also on the crowdfunding. I can't attest to how someone else feels about that. Some people do as well. I see a lot of people putting up digital comics on their campaigns and also elsewhere too. But I also see people that don't want to put out digital. They fear piracy or this or that or whatever. To each their own. Everybody's free to do whatever it is that they do. I don't see a mass aversion to people doing a digital release or anything like that. But I think that the pros far outweigh the cons, at least through my experiences. As far as piracy goes, I will say this. Largely, the piracy stemmed from having books on Comixology. Even a lot of these sites, they'll say if it's not on Comixology, like they'll actually say it in terms of reaching out to them. If it's not on Comixology, we can't get the book. So over the years, I had talked to our Comixology rep saying, hey, this is what this site is blatantly taking the books that we have off of here and among others and pirating them. And then they get money through advertising revenue and even donations and sometimes even site memberships and things like that the piracy sites will do. But Comixology just shrugged at it. That was when I was like, okay, it's I understand it's difficult to fight piracy, but it's different going into it and you literally know the stuff is going to get pirated by having it on this platform. And like I said, when we sell digital direct, we make more on that than we do, and we don't make a lot on it, 10% generally of our sales, but we make more on it now than we did when we were with Comixology. So I haven't, to my knowledge, and knock on wood, I haven't noticed a lot of piracy occurring ever since we left Comixology. So that kind of thing in terms of the backers doing it and whatever else. I mean, I could be naive about it, but I suspect that most of the backers would not be pirating the digital books to wherever else. And even if they did, it's in a small enough way that we're not noticing it. So everyone's got their own fears and concerns and reasons for things with stuff. I'm just saying mine in terms of the digital. We always are going to offer digital on our stuff. We've got digital on the site. And as long as the creators of the books, because Alternatives creator owns, they have to sign off on it. If they don't want their book being available digitally, we don't do that. Like Legends of Log wasn't available digitally because the creator of that book did not want that to be that way. It came out on a Wednesday. When issues sell, as per the understanding and agreement, when an issue is sold out in print, it gets delisted digitally. So it sells out digitally and physically. So sometimes people will go, well, how come there's no... It came out on Wednesday, 1, 2, 3, etc. That should be available digitally. Well, that's an agreement with the people who submit their work. So basically, we treat it as once we are out of it physically, we're also out of it digitally. But other than that, everything else is on Alterna through the digital store. In terms, though, again, it's creator-owned. So you have to also understand when some books depart, for whatever reason, they leave Alterna, So some things will get delisted, some things will get taken down, some things will go on clearance. It depends on the agreement with the creator. It depends on how things shake out with whatever. Sometimes all the books go to the creator. Sometimes the books get donated. Sometimes the books go on clearance. It completely depends upon the creator. But those are all things, too, if you're going into it with crowdfunding and you're a publisher, you have to think about. If you're a creator, you don't really have to think too much about those things. Usually that's all your stuff. You own all of it. So taking a quick look at the crowdfunding stuff here, I'm going to take a look at your questions as well. People have asked about shipping, fulfillment, all that stuff. Keep in mind you want to shop around as well for packing material. You want to shop around for your boxes, your Stay Flats, your Easy Fold mailers, your Gemini mailers, all that good stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into the packing and shipping process, but everybody's different about it. Everyone handles it in a different way. So me giving you what I do with it may or may not help you out. If you've ordered from Alterna, you can generally see how I pack and ship things. I've made a video before about how I generally pack and ship things. I put that on the Alterna site. I think that was like a year or two ago. We try to pack things as best as possible here, and even then sometimes stuff still gets destroyed. So keep in mind when you do fulfillment, it will most likely take 2 to 3 times as long. That's a good rule of thumb in general. Everything's going to take 2 to 3 times as long as what you initially think it's going to be. But do your due diligence and try to seek out as many different kinds of prices, places to get things from as you possibly can. You'll really be thankful in the long run. All right, so I'm going to get to some of the questions and whatnot here tonight. I'm just bear with me as I look through the chat because I'm looking back at like 9:15, 9:20 right now, and then we'll close down the show after the questions and whatnot are answered. If you've got questions that you didn't pose during the rest of the show but you want to have them now, please, now is the time to do it. I'll end once we answer all of them. Let's see. So K-Pop says, no plans for myself just yet, backing all the cool stuff instead. Well, there you go. Shrek says, I put my crude amateur stuff free on YouTube. I'm a long way from creating anything worth selling. Got to change your attitude, Shrek. Change your attitude. Keep working on your stuff. I know you might feel that way, but your thoughts become reality, man. So seriously, don't talk down on yourself. I know it's difficult sometimes to not be self-deprecating, and you might feel like you're being cocky or something like that, but always talk more realistically or positively about yourself. And it's not realistic to put down your stuff or anything like that, because the more you do that, the more you're going to constantly become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I know that might be how you feel right now, but seriously, I can't stress enough how important the attitude part of this is. Always try your best to build yourself up. You're getting to where you have to go. And if you're not trying to get to where you have to go, make sure you're putting in that work to get to where you have to go. JW Learning, greetings. What's up, JW? K-Pop says, I've had issues on just about every site. 2 on Kickstarter took over 2 years to get, and I'm still missing items. 1 on Indiegogo is going on year 3, and the items aren't even out. Yeah, I hear you. Some of these, it's more about the individual, obviously, than the platform. But I noticed that for whatever reason, at least in the earlier days of Kickstarter, I mean like the first 4 or 5 years, it was really, really, it's just a crapshoot whether you were getting anything from anyone. It was like scam city in terms of people, I think, putting up campaigns or being in over their head or whatever it was. And a lot of people just didn't fulfill or update or anything. And some people just completely deleted all their social media and you never heard from them again. And that was that. It was very strange. And not that stuff doesn't happen now, but it definitely doesn't happen as much. That's for sure. K-Pop says Zoop and FMC. I haven't backed enough to have any problems with it yet. I've never used Zoop. I probably won't. So yeah, I haven't backed them enough or even looked into them enough to give you a proper assessment. I know people that have had campaigns on Zoop, and they were like, kind of shrugging about it. And then they went and they returned to wherever else, whether it was Kickstarter or Indiegogo. That's about as much as I know. Frederick says you can create a coupon code for single shipping off of multiple items. I'm guessing that relates to Fund My Comic. I'll have to look into that. Ronan says, I highly recommend FMC. There you go. Eloise says, please let Luke know your suggestions. I will. Cole King says, I'm not a fan of FMC, and I think new creators should focus their attention on IGG or their own site. JW says, even just an ArtStation page. People need some place to direct someone to. I've had tons of experiences, even trying to hire artists, where I look at like the Twitter page or whatever, and because that's usually where people end up talking to me on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. So I'll look at their page, and I'm thinking, are you sure you're an artist? There's no art. There's no art. There's no mention of art. There's no mention of making comics. There's no mention of any of it. That's important too. Make sure you're posting stuff on there. And if you're not posting stuff on there, make sure you're somewhere. Make sure you're somewhere that you can direct and say, go look over here. I can't tell you how many people I've dealt with over the years where they don't have a site at all to point to see. They just have to, like, they go, can I just email you a bunch of things? And I'm like, no, you should have a presence. Because also when I'm going to hire someone, I'm going to expect that they have some kind of a presence as well. Unless your work is unbelievable, you're going to have to at least bring some kind of a presence to the table in terms of when you're being hired on for a project. So that's a whole conversation, though, too, for another day. But good advice. Yeah, even just that kind of a thing works. Buddha Bear says, I have and may still back on BackerKit because they have a music company that is doing soundtracks for two of my favorite authors. I've never used BackerKit, but yeah, I've heard people not really have many complaints about that. Rick Joseph says, as a fan, Kickstarter is far superior to Indiegogo, in my opinion. I know some people, it really is. It's like a no accounting for taste kind of a thing. Some people really love Kickstarter. Some people really love Indiegogo, and vice versa. Some people, they hate one or the other for multiple reasons. Sometimes even just for the way, sometimes even just the name. Some people are like, Indiegogo. I get it. We all have our quirks. We all have our preferences. Let's see. We got Sark. What's up, Sark? Thank you for being here. Buddha Bear says, Pete, curious of your opinion on low goal setting that a lot have started doing. Okay. So if you're going to put a low goal, make sure there's a reason for it. So I look at this campaign here that we have up. It's a $500 flexible goal, but when you scroll down, we mentioned that the real goal here is $7,000, and it's combined on the alternacomics.com/funding page. Now, I wish there was a way to do this kind of split campaign stuff. It's not ideal, and that's something that I'm constantly trying to figure out every time we do this. It's not ideal in terms of how it combines, but I strive every day to update, sometimes multiple times a day, to update the totals. So right now the total is 126 total backers, 3,492 raised. So we're $8 away from the 50% mark. On the Alterna side, you can see what the goal is as well. Now, things are a bit different with this. I'm fairly confident we can reach a $7,000 goal. I don't think we've had a campaign in a while where we haven't at least hit 10,000. Even when there's, with the 4 books on here, I'm fairly confident we can reach the 7,000. If we reach the 8,000, we do a stretch goal. We've got a King Cryptid Alternafoil card for you guys. But with that said, if you're in a position, because that's the thing too, if we don't reach the 7,000, everyone's getting money back. They get their stuff back, and books start getting canceled. It gets kind of grim, but I'm fairly certain. I'm like, I'm 100% certain we're hitting the $7,000 goal. Ain't no way we're not hitting that. We're gonna hit that $7,000 goal. But if you're someone where you're starting off and you need, let's say, $10,000 for your project, and you put it in at $500, but you need 10,000. That's going to put you in a rough spot. You know, there's a couple people who are in certain situations where they've been doing this for a long time and they can go in there with a $500 goal because it doesn't really matter. They're raising $500 at least within the next 2 seconds, and they're going to get to 5,000 within the next 10 minutes, and they're going to get to 10,000 within the next half hour. There's people out there. There's very few, but there are people out there that are creators with strong enough followings and strong enough characters and stories that they could do that. And so they kind of go in there and they do that. Instead of mapping out, I would need it for this, and I think I would need that, and whatever it is. You know, so, but when you're a new creator, try to be as upfront about what your costs are. And also try to invest as much in yourself as you possibly can, too. So if you could put $1,000 or $2,000 into your project, and then, you know, you need $3,000 or whatever it is, and that's what your goal becomes, think about also shipping and break it down as to how many backers you think you're going to ship. Multiply that maybe by like $10 or something like that, and then add that into the cost of what your goal would be. There's a lot of different factors that go into a goal. It's not just the print costs, it's not just the merch costs, it's not just the shipping costs, it's also the production cost. Even when it comes to making a book, a lot of people will look at it and go, okay, so the book to print, it costs, we'll say $2 again, right? It costs $2 to print that book. So that's the production cost of that book. Not if you're the one that's putting through the entirety of that cost. That would be like saying that the production cost of a movie is the digital file or the film. It has nothing else to do with anything else that made that movie. The production cost of that book also is what you paid for the talent, divided by, put all that together, divided by then how many books are you printing. Are you printing 500 copies? Are you printing 100? Are you printing 5,000 copies? What are you doing? And then that turns into basically what your production cost is. Print cost is just another aspect added to your production cost. And I find that there's a lot of creators over the years that don't bother accounting for their personal production costs when they go through a publisher or crowdfunding. They just look at everything as print cost. And that's a rough way to go about it. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend really trying to focus on the fact that this is going to cost this based on this is how much. That's why the King Cryptid goal is like $15,000. You know, so there's a lot of different aspects to all of this. But again, it's to each their own, how people want to do this stuff. I'm just, when I see a new creator and they go for 500, and I definitely know that they would need more than that. Even talking to some creators in the past, you know, they have a $500 goal. They raised maybe 2,000, but they were hoping they would have hit like 6 or 7. And now they're like, oh man, what do I do? Because I have to fulfill, but I need to put all of this out of pocket. And they either dig deep, which is commendable, and I think that's the right thing to do. They dig deep, they take their time, they be upfront with their backers, and they go, look, this is how it is. I didn't really budget that properly. I'm going to need more time on my end. You'll still get that thing, that book, that product, whatever it may be. But, you know, don't put yourself in that situation. Don't try to do that. That's what I recommend anyway. But yeah, it's everybody's going to do their own thing. Let's see here. I keep scrolling on down. We got Frederick says on FMC you can have individual items now. Yeah, I've noticed that too. You can have individual items. I gotta check Fund My Comic again because they're always growing. It's been like 3 or 4 months or whatever since I last looked, and like I said, I kind of want to do a second chance sort of campaign for people who maybe want to just back on Fund My Comic and just put the new comics on there, nothing else, just the new comics, and do that. Paul says you could always pay somebody else to market your product, but genuine excitement is priceless. Crowdfunding works best when you're active and engaged with your investors. You know, your investors, your backers, that kind of thing. The people who are, and that's something too. First and foremost, you should be your own investor. You know, you're invested, hopefully, more than anybody else. You know, so if you're not going into it invested with the time and the money and the energy, and then you're expecting other people to put the time and money and energy. It doesn't work that way. You know, you have to bring it. They're only going to be able to, like, think of it like you're depositing into a bank. You know, all the time, money, and energy that you deposit into the bank of your creation can then be withdrawn by the people around you. So if you only put so much into it, let's say you put next to nothing into that bank of your creation, very little people are going to be able to withdraw from that. So they're not really going to put their time, money, and energy into it either, because they need to take that from you. So if you're giving that time, money, energy, you're giving that out there, and you're showing people, man, this is how much I care. This is how much it means to me, and this is how much it means to me that it means something to you, which is ultimately the most important thing. If you can't do that, if you can't get that across, that's a tough place to start. There kind of is no start. It ends with that. So you really gotta dig deep. You gotta find another aspect of yourself. You have to put yourself out there. You have to feel okay with talking about what it is that you're doing. And for some, it's easier said than done. But I'll tell you that it's gonna still remain difficult if you never just take the steps to start. You have to start. You have to get out there. You have to at least give it your best. It's tough. It's tough. I've had this talk with a lot of people over the years. It really is difficult. Some people just don't have that in them. It's not in their DNA. And those kinds of people, I recommend that instead you really build up in all the other ways that you can. You don't have to be like charismatic in front of a camera. That's not what I'm saying either. What I'm largely saying is that you have to focus on your strengths. So if you're really good and you care and you're more comfortable with writing, put together blogs and newsletters and a website and maintain that. Get on social media, do that. You don't have to be in front of the camera. But you also then have to figure out, how are you going to grow? You're going to grow by being of service to others. So what can you do? Well, if you've got a blog, then you can write and do interviews with others. You're going to have to give your time and energy in some way, shape, or form to others. You can't just keep on saying, let me take. You have to also give. Like I said before, you're going to probably have to give more than you take. But eventually, you're going to hit a point where you realize, like, wow, I give a certain amount, but I've given so much to so many that eventually I go, there's so many people here who actually care about what I'm doing. And you never would have thought it when you were starting out. I'm telling you right now, you never would have thought about it. 18 years ago, I never would have thought about I'd have anything close to the proximity of what I've got right now. It's you have to go into it with a genuine sense of, this is my selfish desire to create and get something out there. And it has to turn, then you have to transmute that selfish desire into a selfless desire to help and enrich and benefit others with what it is you're creating and what it is that you're doing. And that is, seriously, that's the best and honestly one of the only ways I've ever seen people become successful without losing their friggin' minds. Being able to look themselves in the mirror and still feel comfortable about themselves is knowing that they are helping other people also. And that whatever it is, they're creating something and it brings people joy, or it impacts their life in a positive way, or that they've created a platform that other people can also benefit from, and hopefully it inspires those people to also do the same. But there's some people who take, and then wonder, why doesn't anyone want to give anymore? You got to start giving back. Buddha Bear says Shopify makes it easy entry into website. Bancroft figured it out. Yeah, there you go. You can try that too. Keep in mind, all these sites also have a fee associated with them. Some people think that they're just free, and it's not that way. Jefferson says, I prefer the alternate site. I now only back on Indiegogo and Kickstarter if there are no other options. I appreciate that too. K-Pop says, I like to buy direct from publishers, but if they are struggling to get a campaign funded, I back there instead. That's commendable as well. Let's see here. Jefferson says, it is in giving that we receive. 100%. Yan Zhao says, didn't give yourself enough time to run the campaign or fulfill. Oh, man, I'm going to have to... I think you're talking about the because you demanded it. In terms of fulfill. Or just in terms of what I'm saying that, you know, if you think it's going to take you 4 months, give yourself 6, that kind of a thing. It's to complete the production of something. Now, if you want to go into it and you want to have everything completed with production and ready to go, and as soon as it's done, it's ready to print and ship and all that other stuff, that's one way to do it too. But you also have to then keep in mind that there's different hurdles that might be before you if you're trying to get all of that together before you start raising money. So you're putting all of your own investment into it first and then trying to recoup some or all when you do the crowdfunder. And that's another way to do it too. It's almost more like a pre-order system at that point. But people do it that way as well. Is there a right way or wrong way? I think there's just different ways. So yeah, everyone does it differently as to what they think would work best for them. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It's a learning process. That's all I could say. K-Pop says, just talk about your project. The more passion you show for what you're creating, the more people will want to back it. K-Pop gets it. K-Pop gets it. Let's see. Unhinged says, I got that big perk. Great value. Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad that people did. The because you demanded it, fully loaded collector case. It was one of those things of like, oh, okay, all the crunch the numbers and it'll work fine. You know, and then not thinking 40% price increase. Now, I could have avoided a lot of that if I had just not been so hubristic in terms of the amount of books that I put on there. If we had just stuck to like core books, you know, like just did like number ones or something like that, and stuck to maybe 12 to 15 something, that would have been a great value still, and it would have been on point. And even with the 40% price increase that came out of nowhere, it still would have been possible, and we wouldn't have been in a bad predicament. But because, you know, it was like, hey, we'll reprint this and that, and let's just reprint everything, and then, you know, it'll be fine. The scale at which we were unlocking them was like every $500. If we did it every $1,000 maybe, then that would have been something else that could have been okay too. So there's a lot of lessons to take from that campaign, but that campaign's like 3 years under at this point, so it's already gone. K-Pop says, I need to back KC 5 to 9. Loved 1 to 4. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Let's see. Comics for Life says, how much books would you need to sell to consider your title successful? If you were to ballpark, don't know if it's been asked. I mean, that really depends. That's a really tough one to gauge. That metric is kind of different for every single person, and even among the books that are at Alterna, that metric is different. I would say a good rule of thumb for everybody is to aim at a baseline of 300. You know, if you could do 300 and build on that, that's great. If you could do 500, even better. But it's a different metric for everybody, and it really depends upon what your goal is, what your aim is, what you're putting into the project. Someone might be doing this for the first time and sell 100. That's fantastic. Build off of that. It's certainly not a failure. If you're able to continue to do what it is that you're doing, then that project was not a failure. That's a success. Rick Joseph, if your campaign does not include a digital alternative, you're an idiot for leaving money on the table. Rick Joseph is a little more a little more unkind in his choice of words than I am. To each their own in terms of that. I understand the arguments for and against. I think the piracy argument on that respect is a little bloated, a little overblown. But I get it why some people are like, no, they're not going to put digital. And I get why people will. But yeah, everybody is just... Yeah, exactly. Piracy is going to happen regardless and things like that. And yeah, It's, you know, it's a frustrating catch-22 of a situation. That's for sure. Paul says, thought spiral. You claim you're a failure, so you don't try, and it proves you right. So you keep at it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, man. That's what people do. People do that a lot of the time when they're really afraid of success, because once you're successful, once you've accomplished your objective, once you've achieved something that you didn't really believe you could achieve, you look at that and go, I don't really have many other people to blame now. Now you got to keep that up. And if you don't know how you attained that, because sometimes that will happen. Sometimes people will become a success out of nowhere. There's been people that have run campaigns that I know that like they'll hit $100,000, and I'm like, "What'd you do?" You know, like that's great, congrats. And they're like, "I don't know what I did. I don't know what I did." And then the next campaign it'll be like 10 grand, and I'm like, "What happened?" You know, and they just don't know. They don't know what they did to achieve the level of success that they wish they could achieve again. It was like lightning in a bottle. And they can't, for the life of them, figure out what it was. And that's got to be a frustrating feeling. But yeah, sure, there's a lot of people out there that they'll talk themselves down like crazy, and they'll beat themselves up about everything, and they'll be like, no, I can't, you know, it's not going to happen. Every single thing, you know, it's not a thoughtful conversation about why we can't do this, but we can do that, which is good. Focus on your strengths, focus on what you can do. It's more about, nope, can't do that, can't do this, can't do the other thing. And it's like, well, what can you do? And then it's kind of like a shrug. I don't really know. I don't know what I can do. That's an attitude that's gonna sink you. It's gonna sink you. Kat says, hey, Kat Rocha says, I've successfully ran 7 crowdfunding campaigns. My number one rule is to always be honest with the backers, especially if there are delays. That's a good rule. Eloise says, what's some good advice for packing? Also, do you think it's possible to make comics newsprint, anthology, comic, magazines a thing like they are in Japan? Sort of, kind of. I mean, that's more of like a rights issue thing. You know, that's more of like a combination with creators and getting that together, as opposed to the feasibility of formatting it and turning it into a production. That's the least of the concerns. You know, you can totally do that. It's just more about, will everyone be on board for that? As far as good advice for packing, I would say a good rule of thumb is to make sure that stuff is not touching the corners of a box or a mailer. You know, it's got to be a little bit of space there. An inch maybe or more is good. If it is going to be flush against corners or a side, elevate it, because most likely the corners are going to take the hit more than any other part of the box. So if that thing lands, it's most likely going to hit a corner or a flat side, that kind of a thing, but usually a corner. And that is going to be an instant damage. But yeah, you know, put the packing material in there. You guys see the way I pack stuff. I'll take grocery store flyers and stuff them in the boxes. They're everywhere. They don't even want them. They're made of newsprint, the cheapest paper that there is. People that are like, newsprint's expensive. Well, newsprint's only expensive if you do it the wrong way. But there's a really easy way to make newsprint work for you, depending upon how many you print and how you print them. The BeamPad question: looking to get my YouTube in time, but notice popular streams have a lot of controversial situations and people seem to like that. Not me. How can one find a following without all of that trouble? Build your house of brick. Build your house of brick. Brick by brick. You know, it's going to take time. You're going to notice some people are out there and it looks like they're having fun, and maybe they are having fun, but it's not for you. You want to do things your way. I respect that. I understand that. I empathize with that. I do the same thing. I feel the same way. I've been on streams like that, and, you know, I respect, you know, when in Rome, you know, that kind of thing. I respect that's how that person wants to do their channel, but it brings me no joy, really. So I kind of avoid a lot of that stuff. Mostly because I'm completely ignorant to a lot of it. I'm too busy with a lot of different things to know what the hell the latest drama or crazy thing is of the day. But some people enjoy it. Some people get a good laugh at it. It's tough for me. I've tried that. It doesn't put me in a good headspace. It doesn't put me in a good feeling. And it tweaks my creativity too. Some people, it's fine. They can do it. And hey, whatever works for them works for them. If they're doing good with it, whatever. To each their own. Seriously, that's how I view it. But if you want to do what you want to do, the best thing you can do, obviously, other than getting started, whatever you feel confident in, whatever you feel like you are curious about. So confidence and interest are going to really help shape a channel for you, or anything in life for you. Now, if you go about it and you're like, so-and-so does this and that, and they're successful, and they seem to be popular with what they talk about and whatever, but it's not really for me. If you do that, and you go, I want to replicate, though, and emulate what they're doing, that's not going to work out. That's not going to work out for you in the long run. You know, maybe you could fake it for a little bit, but you're going to have to come back to what makes you want to do what it is you want to do, what drives and motivates you. Lean into your individual uniqueness. If you want to sit there and you want to talk about Art Deco all day long, if you're in there and you want to talk about the kind of music that inspires you to create, if you're in there and you want to talk about art supplies all day long and that's the thing you want to do on your channel, whatever it is, whatever you genuinely want to discuss, I recommend make that your channel. It's a part of you. It's augmented you. As soon as you start going away from you, and you're not saying that you want to do this, which is good, but understand that maybe it'll take a little more time. Sometimes it doesn't. There's a ton of channels. For every channel you can show me that's like drama and controversy and this and that and oh, look at that, there's just as many channels that don't do that and are very successful. But it's generally because they're going out there and they're pursuing something that's genuine to them. They're not trying to replicate, emulate, or do something else. They're trying to just be them and go and put that out there. Sometimes it resonates, sometimes it doesn't, and that's just how it is. But whatever you're doing, make sure you're just going, yeah, you know what, that's what I want to do. To you know, whatever they want to do, they do it. But what I want to do is this. Then do that. And it's as simple as that. It might not give you the same results, or maybe it'll give you better results. You don't know. But whatever you do, you should be truthful to yourself. Buddha Bear says, Pete, did you see my post about Walmart? No, I didn't see your post about Walmart. Can you DM it to me? That'd be great. Paul says, low goals sometimes play specific systems on a site. RPG publisher friend told me the trick to a Kickstarter is to hit funding quick to put it on the mods radar so they signal boost the project. Yeah, I've heard that too. And algorithms are always changing, right? Algorithms are always changing. I would suggest play more about what you need than about the algorithm, because you're going to get stuck one day when they start tweaking that algorithm, which I noticed that it looks like it's getting tweaked again. The low goal stuff is getting not as much attention as maybe it used to be. And then when you get certain other things with like shadow banning involved and all the other nonsense, and who can even figure it out or keep up with it, it's a very strange situation at that point. So, yeah, that's a big ask. Whatever it is a big ask. That's for sure. Dr. Mask, you're late, but we're still here. This hour-long, 2-hour show. Yan Zhao was right. See, whatever time you think you're gonna need, double it. SDA, how's it going, SDA? Cole King says, a lot of the big channels that do the drama stuff also take the time to promote new creators. I would still suggest trying to get your stuff in front of their audiences. Well, there you go. SDA says, get the 4 new comics campaign here. There you go. Thank you, SDA, for putting that link in the chat. Ronan says, or you can come visit with me and I can teach you to host your own site. There you go. And Ronan, maybe that's something you can also do. Build that up on, if you do a YouTube channel or something like that, maybe that's something that you can share as well. Share your experience. Everybody, share your experiences with other people. And that's something that's great. Let's see. Eric says, I have been burned badly by crowdfunding. There's no guarantee for the campaign owner to fulfill on any of their promises. I prefer an actual shop because there is more accountability. I respect that. Dr. Mask says, if you aren't excited about your project, who will be? Question for the ages. Let's see. Thank you, SDA, for putting up all the various links. Appreciate that. Dr. Mask says, Pete, do you do a lot of social media or just stick to Twitter? I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I used to be on Facebook, but I haven't been on Facebook in years. I closed my account on there a while ago. And I didn't really notice that it was helpful. It was way more time consuming and even monetarily consuming. But yeah, I'm not really on anything else. I mean, YouTube. Obviously, of all of them so far, I prefer the YouTube interaction. Let's see here. Yes, Logan, no project's a failure so long as you learn from it. 100%. Frederick says the shipping to Canada is prohibitive. If I'm taking a chance on a comic, I'll start with a digital comic to read it first. Wish I could get a discount to upgrade to a physical copy after. Well, yeah, that's a good point. Buddha Bear says, do you think the way the economy has been that people will have to think about a bigger buffer zone when funding? Or is the cost jumps like the one you had is more rare than anything? It's kind of a rare situation, but it's always good, I guess, to give more of that buffer zone, right? But that was a pretty rare situation. Let's see. Doc says, Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Yeah, well, you're going to be that self-fulfilling prophecy. You can either sit there and think about all the ways you can and make it so, or think about all the ways you can't and just sit there in woe. Let's see. Unhinged says, oh, this is to Beampad. I'll let you guys have that. Dr. Mask says, if you enjoy it, likely someone else will too. 100%. Let's see here. NXerd says, hey, Pete, wish I knew this stream was happening sooner. Well, the replay will be up, so you got it. And no problem, Beampad. It's a good rule of thumb for everything in life. Yan Zhao called it. Yeah, 100% Yan Zhao. You know me, buddy. Cole King says, gotta bounce. This was an awesome stream and a great topic. Thanks, Pete. No problem. We're wrapping up right now anyway. Okay, that's about it. Looks like that's all the questions and comments and whatnot that I could get to. Everybody, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. If you've got questions, comments, whatever it may be, leave them in the replies of the show once it's done, obviously. Especially if there's specific comments on anything or questions. I'll try my best to answer them there. I might have missed some. I'm sure I probably did. All right. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow night with Justin Sweet. We'll be talking about what he's doing with his distribution of comic books. He's getting some like spinner racks and stuff into grocery stores and things like that or whatever. You know, it's pretty cool. So I'll be talking to him tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Hopefully see you guys then. That's 9 o'clock Eastern. Other than that, make sure you go check out the Alterna Comics crowdfunding campaign. Check out the King Cryptid crowdfunding campaign. It's a full moon special tonight on the King Cryptid campaign. Second chance to get a King Cryptid beanie. We're going to go into production soon on those. You don't want to miss out. You might end up missing out unless you back it. Get that beanie. $15. Guarantee you get it. And the new Alterna Comics crowdfunding campaign. 4 new books. That's Blood Realm number 14, Horace H. Hoover number 3, Unit 44 number 9, and Unit 44 number 10. 4 new comics for $9. Plus $6 shipping in the US. That's $15. Amazing. Everybody, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you soon. All the best.